The wind carried the smell of storm and gunpowder. Rhea Collier tasted both on her tongue as she stood on the porch of the Half Moon Saloon and watched the rider ease out of the dusk. The horse was black and patient. The man rode like a shadow that had found bone and breath. Hat low, coat dusty, every boot step on the boards after he dismounted sounded like a verdict. He tied off the reins and lifted his face. Green eyes, a scar that smiled without warmth. Jonah Cade. Her chest went cold and hot at once. He was the cowboy who had broken her father's ranch. Cattle scattered, debts called in by men who never let their hands get dirty. A fire in the north pasture that ate fences and hope. It had his name in every whisper. Jonah Cade. Ruthless, efficient, paid to do what others would not. She had imagined him a monster. She had not imagined the quiet in him, the steadiness, the way the dusk light caught the line of his cheek and made sin look like prayer. He reached the saloon door. Rhea did not move. The lamplight behind her threw a soft ring around her boots. Her palm lifted to the frame as if to steady the building, or herself. He stopped, looked at her. The porch groaned under both their weight. The town street stretched empty and brown, like a wound that would not scab. "You are not welcome here," she said. "I am not here to be welcome," he said. His voice was rough and low, a creek bed after long drought. She felt it along her ribs before she understood the words. She also felt what memory refused to forget. The smoke, the long night, her father's silence at the table, eyes gone to stone. Jonah Cade had ridden near their land 2 days before the fire. She had seen him from the hill. He had not looked back when she called out. Rhea held his gaze. "We lost everything." He nodded once. "I know." The saloon door pushed open behind her. Heat and whiskey drifted out. Old music, half remembered. She did not step aside. He did not ask again. "What do you want, Jonah Cade?" "I want a room," he said. "I want a drink. I want the rain to come tonight and put the dust down. I want to sleep and wake and ride out of this town with no one behind me." She studied him. The silence between words felt like a hand waiting in the dark. She tasted anger. She tasted something else. She hated that second taste most of all. "Rooms are full," she said. He looked past her into the saloon, the corner table near the stove, the crowd of men with poker eyes, the piano missing 3 keys. He looked back at her. "You are lying," he said. She swallowed. It stung to be seen so easily. "Go to the livery," she said. "There's a cot in the loft. I will pay double for a real bed," he said. "We do not sell double comfort here," she said. "Only comfort or none." That almost put a smile on his mouth. He tipped his hat, the smallest courtesy. Then he stepped past her into the lamplight. The smell of rain moved with him, as if he had brought weather in his pocket. Inside, men lifted their eyes and then looked away. Jonah crossed to the bar and put a coin down. Rhea followed. She kept the counter between them like a fence that was not tall enough. "Whiskey," he said. She poured. The bottle made a soft glug that sounded like surrender. He did not drink at once. He let the glass sit in his palm as if warmth could climb out and tell him something true. "You should ride on," she said. "I will," he said, "when I am finished." "Finished with what?" "With the thing that brought me back." Rhea felt a chill, even though the stove was red with heat. "What thing?" He did not answer. He took the whiskey into him slow. His throat worked. He set the glass down with care. The room watched from many corners. No one wanted to be near the spark. Everyone wanted to see the flame. Outside, The first drop of rain hit the window like a knuckle, then another. The whole town seemed to exhale. Rhea leaned on the bar, her voice softened without permission. "My family is not the same," she said. "We sleep light. We look over our shoulders when clouds smell like smoke." He studied her face as if counting the miles it had walked. "I am sorry for what your family lost," he said. "Sorry does not build a fence." "No," he said, "but it can keep a man from lighting another match." What he did not know was that she had kept one of those blackened fence posts like a relic. She had run her fingers across its char until her skin remembered what fire does to wood and to trust. She had sworn to herself that if she ever saw him again, she would not shake. She would not listen. She would not feel. He looked tired, not weak. A man could be tired and still be the most dangerous shape in a room. There was a wear in him that did not come from travel. It came from the weight a person tries to carry alone. A gust pushed rain under the door. The floorboards darkened. She stepped back. He moved a chair away from the draft without thinking. Small mercy, habit of care. It unsettled her more than any rumor about him. "You could leave tonight," she said. "The road south holds no questions. The road south holds men who think I owe them," he said. "Do you?" "Not in the way they believe." He set another coin down. She poured again. He took half, left half. He nodded toward the back hallway. "The rooms are not full," he said. She met his eyes. "You will sleep in the last one," she said. "No fire in the grate. Clean sheets. Keep your boots near the door." "Thank you," he said. "Do not thank me," she said. "I want to see the shape of the man who hurt us when he is tired. I want to know if he still looks like he can save himself." Something flickered in his eyes. Not pride, not shame. A memory turned toward the light. "I was hired to squeeze your father," he said. "I was not hired to burn him. I left the valley before sunset. Someone else finished the job. I can tell you his name if you want the truth without sleep." The room seemed to listen harder. The rain found its voice on the roof. But then she whispered, "Tell me in the morning." He nodded once. A slow surrender. He turned toward the stairs. Rhea watched the length of him, the coat that had weather on it from other states, the shoulders that carried storms, the hand that brushed the rail in a way that looked like blessing and threat at the same time. She felt the ache of old hurt begin to move. Not ease. Move. Like a river breaking a little ice at the edges. It made her angry to feel it. It made her want to stand in the doorway of the last room and make sure he breathed all night. It made her think of what warmth can do to a cold promise. The lamp on the bar hissed. The piano settled. Outside, the street turned to a ribbon of mud and reflected the sky like a mirror no one asked for. Rhea blew out the lanterns one by one until only the stove held its red eye. She paused at the hallway. She could hear the quiet of a man who had learned how to live in it. She could hear her own pulse. She did not pray. She did not curse. She stood in the storm's breath and felt both. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night has not finished speaking. If you have ever stood in the doorway between anger and mercy, let your presence be known. Your listening keeps this small fire burning for the next part. Morning came soft and gray, the kind that blurred edges instead of breaking them. The storm had passed but left its smell behind, wet dust, old sorrow, and something clean. Rhea opened the saloon door and watched the mist crawl off the street. The town was slow to wake, the way people move after bad dreams. She poured herself coffee from a tin pot gone thin at the handle. The sound of footsteps on the stairs came quiet but steady. Jonah Cade appeared, hair damp, shirt rolled at the sleeves. He looked different in daylight, less ghost, more man. Yet daylight did not forgive what she remembered. He stopped at the bottom step. "You're up early," he said. "I don't sleep heavy when strangers stay under my roof." He gave a small nod. "Fair." Rhea studied him in the quiet. He had taken the cot she offered, but still looked like he'd slept standing. His eyes were lined with things that never rested. She wondered what they had seen, what kind of work turned a man's silence into armor. He noticed her watching. "You wanted a name," he said. She froze, mug halfway to her lips. "What name? The one who burned your ranch, the one who took what I left undone." Her pulse quickened. "You expect me to believe a word out of your mouth?" He didn't answer right away. He walked to the bar and set a folded piece of paper down. "Don't believe me. Believe what's written." The paper was weathered, edges torn by rain. She hesitated, then unfolded it. Inside the ink had bled, but not enough to hide the words. It was a contract, her father's name, Jonah's name, and one more, Elias Dorn. Her breath caught. "Elias," she whispered. "He was my father's partner." Jonah nodded. "He hired me to push your father to sell. When your father refused, Elias paid someone else to make sure there was no ranch left to sell." Rhea's stomach turned. "And you walked away." "I walked away when I realized what kind of man I'd been riding for." He leaned on the counter, eyes steady. "But I didn't stop it. That's my sin. That's why I'm here." The words hung heavy. She hated that part of her wanted to believe him. It was easier to keep him as the villain. Villains stay where you put them, but truth moves. It slips through fences and finds you where you thought you were safe. Outside, a wagon rolled by, wheels creaking. The world didn't stop for revelations. She folded the paper and slid it back across the counter. If this is supposed to buy forgiveness, it's a poor bargain. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Jonah said. "Just a chance to set the record straight." Rhea laughed, low and sharp. "Men like you always talk about setting things straight. The desert is full of graves dug for good intentions." He didn't flinch. "Then bury mine when I'm done." Something in his calm rattled her. It wasn't arrogance. It was weariness, a kind of peace that comes when a man stops running from his own shadow. The door swung open, and a gust of cool air followed a stranger inside. Tall, clean coat, hat too fine for this town. Rhea knew trouble when she saw it. Jonah turned slightly, hand near his hip, but not touching the revolver. "Morning," the man said, smiling with no warmth. "I'm looking for a writer named Cade, Jonah Cade." The room stilled. Even the stove seemed to hush. "Who's asking?" Jonah said. "Name's Dorn," the man said. "Elias Dorn's kin." Rhea's spine stiffened. "You'd best state your business." The man's smile widened. "Family business. My uncle died with a few debts unsettled. I'm here to collect." Jonah straightened. The kind of stillness that meant danger took root. "Your uncle's debts were paid in fire. Then consider this the interest." Before she could blink, the man's hand twitched toward his coat. Jonah's gun was out before the motion finished. The hammer clicked once, slow and deliberate. "Don't," Jonah said. The stranger froze, hands raised halfway. "You won't shoot me here, not with witnesses." Rhea's voice came low. "You don't know this town. It forgets easy." The man's jaw tightened. He dropped his hands and stepped back. "We'll finish this outside, Cade." Jonah didn't reply. The man left, boots splashing through puddles. The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Rhea exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. "He'll be waiting for you." "I know. You're not walking into that alone." He looked at her, surprised. "Why would you help me?" "I'm not helping you," she said. "I'm making sure the man who ruined my father doesn't die before I get every truth he owes me." A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. "Fair enough." They stepped onto the porch. The rain had stopped, but the sky still carried the weight of it. Across the street, Dorn waited, hands near his belt. Jonah turned to her. "Stay back. I've buried enough men to know when to duck," she said. He almost laughed, then drew his gun. The air held its breath. The first shot cracked like the sky, splitting open. Dorn's bullet missed. Jonah's didn't. The man staggered, dropped, and the street went still, except for the echo rolling off the hills. Jonah lowered his arm. Smoke curled from the barrel. Rhea stood frozen. Death always came too fast, too quiet. Jonah looked down at the body, then at her. "He would have killed you too." "I know," she said softly, "but it doesn't make it easier." He nodded. "It never does." The sheriff would come. Questions would follow. But for a brief moment, only the rain's memory and their breathing filled the silence. Rhea looked at the man who had once destroyed her world and now stood between her and another grave. She couldn't name what she felt. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't hate. Maybe both lived side by side, learning how to breathe the same air. Jonah holstered his gun and said, "There's more to this story, Rhea, and if you want to know how deep it goes, you'll have to ride with me." Her heart beat once, hard. She looked down the empty road. Beyond it lay every answer she both wanted and feared. She met his eyes. "Then I'll ride. If this story has found a pulse inside your chest, stay close. The dust hasn't settled yet. If you've ever chosen truth over peace, let your heart keep listening." The trail ahead still holds what they haven't said. They rode out before sunrise, the town shrinking behind them like something that had never belonged to either of them. The sky was the color of bruised pearl. Wind pressed low over the grasslands, and the world smelled of rain left over from the night before. Rhea kept her distance at first, her horse trailing a few paces behind Jonah's. She didn't trust silence, not when it came from a man like him. But he rode, without the stiffness of someone hiding guilt. His back was straight, movements calm, as if the trail itself had been waiting for him to return. When the first light climbed over the ridge, he slowed and glanced back. "You can ride closer," he said. "I like to see where you're going." He gave a small nod. "Fair enough." They passed through low hills, scattered with mesquite and stone. Somewhere far off, a hawk called. The world felt wide again, too wide for secrets, too quiet for lies. Rhea finally asked, "Where does this trail lead, Jonah Cade?" "To a place that never learned mercy," he said. "The Dorn homestead. That's where the fire began." Her pulse jumped. "You mean to tell me we're riding straight to the men who ruined my life?" "That's the plan." "Why would they still be there?" He looked at the horizon. "Because men who do bad work tend to guard the ashes." The rhythm of hooves filled the space between them. Rhea felt her throat tighten. "You really think they'll talk?" "They will," he said. "If not to you, then to the ghosts they made." She studied him. "You sound like a man who's been living with ghosts a long time." "I have," he said, "and I'm tired of riding with them." The wind caught her hair. For a moment the road felt almost peaceful. She hated that peace came from being near him. It felt like betrayal to her father, to herself. But peace has its own gravity. It pulls whether you welcome it or not. By midday, they stopped by a stream that cut through the valley. Jonah dismounted and knelt to fill his canteen. His hands were scarred, old burns crossing the skin like small maps. She saw the tremor that came when he touched cold water. "How did you get those?" she asked. He glanced at his hands, then at her. "Not from your fire. Another one, a long time before. You're not much for straight answers, are you?" "I've learned they don't come cheap," he said. She crouched opposite him, the stream whispering between them. "Then what are you hoping to buy now?" "Peace," he said quietly. "And if not that, then truth." Rhea looked down at the water. It ran clear, catching fragments of light. She remembered nights when she'd prayed to see her father's face in her dreams and got only smoke instead. Maybe truth was the only thing left worth chasing. They mounted again as the afternoon burned gold. The trail wound narrow between cliffs. Jonah's horse stumbled once, and he steadied it with a soft murmur that almost sounded like prayer. Rhea found herself watching him, the way he moved with the animal, not against it. A man who knew how to listen to what couldn't speak. But then he said, "You should know something before we get there." Her chest tightened. "What?" "I wasn't hired because I was the best gun," he said. "I was hired because I knew your father once." The words struck harder than any bullet. "You knew him?" "I rode with him years ago, before either of us had much to lose. He was the one who taught me how to keep my hands steady. I owed him more than I gave back." She stared at him. "So you took money to destroy the man who once called you friend?" He didn't look away. "Yes." The truth hit, like a blow to the ribs. For a heartbeat, she wanted to turn her horse around, ride until the distance swallowed him, but something kept her still. Maybe it was the honesty in his tone, the way he didn't defend himself. He wasn't asking for her mercy. He was just done lying. She looked at the sky. It was bruising again, purple clouds sliding low, full of rain. "You don't deserve forgiveness," she said. "I know. But if what you say is true, you'll get me to Elias Dorn. I will. And when we find him," his voice was calm, "then you'll decide what happens next." They rode until the world turned blue with evening. The Dorn Ranch appeared as a dark shape against the horizon, once rich, now half rotten. Fences sagged, windmill broken, cattle long gone. Rhea's stomach knotted. "You brought me to a graveyard." He shook his head. "Graveyards don't lie. Men do." They dismounted near the barn. Jonah checked his revolver but didn't draw it. He moved like someone who'd done this before, entering a place where danger might still breathe. "Stay behind me," he said. Rhea almost laughed. "You forget whose family burned here." He met her eyes. "I don't forget anything." The door creaked as they pushed inside. The air was thick with dust and oil. A single lantern burned on a workbench. From the shadows came a voice. "Didn't expect to see you again, Cade." Jonah's shoulders stiffened. "Hello, Elias?" Rhea stepped forward. Her pulse was a drumbeat. "You killed my father." Elias Dorn smiled, teeth yellow in the lamplight. "I gave him a way out. He just didn't take it." "You burned his life down," she said. "Business is business," Elias said. "And if you came here for revenge, you're too late. I've been waiting for the fire you both left behind." Jonah's gun was steady in his hand, but his voice was low. "You should have stayed gone." Elias laughed. "You think I feared death. I made it my partner." Rhea saw Jonah's hand tremble, not from fear, but memory. His breath hitched once, then steadied. She stepped closer. You owe me the truth before you die." Elias's grin faltered. "And what would you do with it, girl?" "Bury it," she said. "And you?" Lightning flashed through the window, and for a heartbeat, everything turned white. The storm had found them again. Jonah's eyes met hers. There was sorrow there, and something stronger. Resolve. Then Elias moved for the rifle by the table. Jonah fired first. The sound filled the barn and the years between them. Elias fell without a word. The lamp rocked, shadows breaking apart like smoke. Rhea stood still, heart pounding. She didn't cry. Not yet. The rain began again, steady and unending. Jonah lowered the gun, his breath ragged. "It's done." Rhea's voice was quiet. "No, it's only beginning. If this story has stirred the ache of old fire in your chest, stay close. The rain still carries their names. If you've ever sought truth through the ashes, let your heart listen a little longer. The storm hasn't finished what it came to do. The storm didn't leave that night. It pressed against the barn like a living thing, wind clawing at the walls, rain whispering through the cracks. The air smelled of gunpowder and wet earth. Elias Dorn's body lay still beside the overturned lantern. Rhea stared at it for a long time, her hands shaking, though she didn't feel cold. Jonah holstered his gun. The motion was slow, tired. He walked to the body, crouched, and pulled a folded paper from the man's coat. His jaw tightened as he read. "What is it?" she asked. "Names," he said. "Men who rode with Dorn, paid riders, some of them still out there. Still doing his work, still burning what they're told to burn." She took a step closer. "So it never ended." "No," Jonah said. "It never ends until someone decides it does." The wind moaned through a broken window. Rhea's throat tightened. "And what do you decide?" He looked at her then, eyes shadowed but steady. "That we finish it the right way this time." She wanted to argue, to tell him she was done with vengeance, but she wasn't. Not yet. The fire inside her had found new breath. Jonah folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. "We can't stay here. Someone will come looking for him." She nodded. "Then we leave before dawn." They found shelter in what was left of a nearby shack. The roof leaked, but the stove still drew a weak flame. Rhea sat by it, hugging her knees, listening to the rain's rhythm. Jonah was across from her, silent, cleaning his gun with the same care someone else might use for prayer. Finally she spoke. "How long have you been running, Jonah Cade?" He didn't look up. "Since I stopped following orders." "Why didn't you stop sooner?" He gave a small, rough laugh. "Because the man I used to be thought money could buy peace. Turns out it only buys distance, and distance doesn't heal anything. It just makes the silence louder." Rhea stared at him through the flicker of firelight. His face softened in the glow. For the first time she saw more than the outlaw who'd ruined her family. She saw the weight in him, the quiet kind that comes from carrying too many ghosts for too long. "You could leave now," she said. "Start over." He shook his head. "Not while there's still fire out there lit by my hands. You can't put them all out." "Maybe not," he said. "But I can try until I'm gone." She fell quiet. The flames cast gold across the walls, dancing in slow rhythm with their breathing. She thought of her father's face, the day after the fire, how he'd stared into the distance as if something inside him had turned to stone. She thought of how long she'd carried that image like a brand. Jonah's voice broke the silence. "Your father was a good man. Stubborn, proud, but good. You said you rode with him." He nodded. "We drove cattle together down near Abilene. He saved my life once. Bandits hit the trail. I caught a bullet through the shoulder. He carried me clear." Rhea's eyes lifted. "And then you helped destroy him." He looked into the fire. "That's what shame does. It makes you forget who you were." She studied him, the way his shadow leaned long against the wall. Something in her chest shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. Outside, thunder rolled low. Rhea whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive you." "You're not supposed to," Jonah said. "You just have to decide what to do next." She nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow we ride after those names." He looked up. "You sure?" She met his gaze. "You said it yourself. It never ends until someone decides it does." He smiled faintly, almost weary. "Then we'll end it together." The rain softened near midnight. She lay down near the stove, the sound of his quiet breathing steady in the dark. Somewhere between the crackle of coals and the rhythm of wind, she felt the strange calm of shared ruin, the place where grief and trust first learned to look at each other. When dawn came, it painted the sky pale gold. They saddled their horses and rode west. The land stretched wide, still wet from the storm, the smell of new earth rising like promise. Rhea glanced at Jonah. "What happens when we find them?" "We listen first," he said. "Shoot if we must." She nodded. "And after?" "After," he said, "we see if there's anything left worth saving." Hours later they reached the edge of a canyon. Below, a campfire smoked faintly, men around it, rifles stacked close. Jonah pointed. "That's one of them, Ben Mallory. He ran with Dorn." Rhea's heartbeat quickened. "How many?" "3, maybe 4. He turned his horse toward the slope. "Stay close." But then she caught his arm. "No," she said. "This time I speak first." He hesitated, then nodded once. They rode down into the canyon, hooves echoing off the rock. The men by the fire looked up. Surprise turned to scorn. One reached for his rifle, but Rhea's voice cut through the wind. "Ben Mallory." He froze, half standing. "Who's asking?" "Rhea Collier. You burned my land." Mallory's grin faltered. "You should have stayed gone, girl." Jonah's revolver gleamed in the half-light. "So should you." The canyon held its breath. Rhea spoke again, her voice low but sharp. "Tell me why. Tell me who gave the order." Mallory spat into the dirt. "Ask the man you're riding with." He lit the first match. She didn't look at Jonah. She already knew the truth of that line. It wasn't new. It was just another echo. Jonah said quietly, "And I've been burning for it ever since." Mallory laughed once, cruel and hard, then burn again. He went for his gun. Jonah fired first. 2 more shots cracked in reply. The air filled with smoke and echoes. When the silence came back, 3 men were down. Rhea's ears rang. Jonah's arm bled, a shallow groove across the skin. She dismounted, shaking. "Are you hit bad?" "No," he said, voice low. "Just enough to remember." She knelt beside him, tore a strip from her sleeve, pressed it to the wound. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "You're a fool." He met her eyes. "So are you. You didn't run." "I'm done running," she said. He smiled faintly. "Then maybe there's hope for both of us." She tied the cloth tight. The wind sighed through the canyon. They were alive, but changed again. Something softer beneath the dust, something that might one day learn the shape of peace. If this story has left your heart beating in the hush between storms, stay near. The trail is far from done. If you've ever seen fire turn to mercy, let that quiet truth keep you listening. The canyon still holds what the next dawn will reveal. The canyon lay quiet after the smoke cleared. The wind returned first, low and wandering, as if afraid to disturb the dead. Rhea sat on a flat stone beside Jonah, her hands still stained with his blood. His sleeve was tied off tight, the wound shallow but angry. He'd lost little blood, yet his breath came slow, controlled, like a man pacing himself through pain. "You need rest," she said. He shook his head. "We can't stay here. We just killed 3 men. They were ghosts already." She looked at the bodies sprawled near the fire. Ghosts still leave questions. Jonah stood, holstered his gun, and nudged one of the rifles aside with his boot. "Questions don't scare me. Silence does." Rhea watched him move through the aftermath. Steady, deliberate, no hesitation. He searched one of the saddlebags and pulled out another folded paper. She frowned. "Another list?" He unfolded it and handed it to her. "No, letters. Payments from Dorn's buyers. There's a name at the bottom you'll recognize." She took it, eyes scanning the words. Her throat tightened. "Randall Pierce," she whispered. "Your father's banker," Jonah said. Rhea looked up sharply. "He told us there was nothing left. No accounts, no credit, no land to claim." "He lied," Jonah said. "He made sure what was left went to Dorn's men." She felt the old anger come alive again, the kind that burned behind her ribs and didn't care who it hurt. "He still lives in Silverton." Jonah nodded. "Then that's where we go." They buried the dead before they left. It wasn't mercy, just necessity. When the last mound of dirt was patted flat, Rhea stood in the wind and whispered something she didn't plan to say out loud. Jonah didn't ask what it was. He only watched her, quiet as the canyon itself. By afternoon they were back on the trail, riding north toward the hills. The sun slid through torn clouds, the land shimmering in patches of gold and shadow. Rhea broke the silence first. "Why didn't you let me take the shot?" "Because I've spent too long watching good people do bad things to keep their hands clean," Jonah said. She looked at him, brow furrowed. "You think killing redeems you?" "No," he said, "but sometimes it stops something worse from crawling further." The road narrowed into rocky ground. Their horses picked careful steps. She studied him out of the corner of her eye, the way the light caught the line of his jaw, the faint tremor in his injured arm that he tried to hide. She wanted to hate him again. It would have been easier than the thing growing quietly beneath her anger. When they reached a stream that cut through the rocks, he stopped to let the horses drink. Rhea climbed down and knelt by the water, splashing her face. The cold bit her skin awake. Jonah crouched nearby, washing his hands. The water turned pink for a moment before running clear again. "You should sleep tonight," he said. "I'll keep watch." She laughed softly. "You think I can sleep next to the man who ruined my life?" "You've done it 3 nights already." She froze, then looked at him. He didn't smirk or gloat, just spoke a truth too plain to argue. She turned away. "Maybe I'm just too tired to hate properly. Or maybe hate's losing ground." His words settled between them like dust. She didn't answer. They camped near the stream that night. The fire burned small, careful. Rhea watched the flames lick at the wood, each spark a heartbeat. Jonah sat across from her, hat low, cleaning his revolver again. His movements were quiet, ritual-like, a man rebuilding control piece by piece. "You said my father saved your life once," she said. "What happened?" He looked into the fire. "We were driving cattle east, near the Cimarron cutoff. Bandits hit the herd at dawn. He got me clear when I took a bullet, carried me 1/2 mile through smoke and dust. Why didn't you ever go back after the fire?" "I tried," he said, "but by the time I got there, the place was ash. I didn't know who survived. Didn't think you had." She looked down, tracing the dirt with her boot. "I did. Barely. My father didn't." Jonah nodded, his face unreadable. "I'm sorry. You keep saying that because it's all that's left when the words that matter come too late." For a long moment neither spoke. The night was alive with insects, the hush of wind through sagebrush. The fire cracked softly, throwing light over his face. Rhea realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. Maybe she never had been. What she'd feared was how much he reminded her of what she'd lost: honor, safety, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "If we find Pierce and he admits it, what then?" Jonah's eyes lifted to hers. "Then you decide how far forgiveness reaches." She stared at him. "And if I can't forgive, then you ride on until you can," he said, "or until you stop needing to." A gust of wind bent the fire sideways. She shivered, drawing her coat tight. Jonah rose, took another blanket from his saddlebag, and laid it beside her. "I don't need your kindness," she said quietly. He paused. "It's not kindness. It's weather." She looked up, confused. "You don't fight weather," he said. "You just share it until it passes." The words lingered longer than the warmth of the fire. When she lay down, she could hear him moving outside the ring of light, pacing slow, the sound of boots on dry ground. His silhouette crossed the glow now and then, and each time it did, she felt something strange, a peace that didn't belong to either of them, yet somehow found them both. Before sleep took her, she whispered, "Jonah." He stopped. "Yeah? Thank you for staying." He didn't answer right away. Then his voice came quiet through the dark. "I told you. I don't leave people in fire anymore." The night deepened. The stream murmured. The stars blinked through thinning clouds. And though Rhea slept light, for the first time since the fire that had ended her world, she did not dream of flames. If this story has softened the dust inside your heart, stay close. The dawn has something to show. If you've ever felt warmth where anger used to live, keep listening. Their trail is still unfolding beneath the rising sun. Dawn came pale and silver, brushing light across the valley like a slow hand. The air was cool enough to see breath. Rhea woke to the crackle of a small fire and the smell of coffee. Jonah sat a few paces away, hat low, steam rising from a tin cup between his hands. He looked like part of the landscape, quiet, steady, and worn by the same years that had carved the rocks around them. She sat up, pulling her coat tighter. "How long have you been awake?" "Since the stars quit talking," he said. She frowned. "You ever answer a question straight?" He handed her the second cup. "Only when the truth fits before sunrise." The coffee was bitter, strong. She drank it anyway. The warmth spread through her, slow and grounding. The firelight caught his face, softening the hard edges. The wound on his arm had darkened around the edges, but he moved like it didn't bother him. They packed in silence, breaking camp as the sun crept higher. The world smelled of wet earth and sage. Birds called from the mesquite, thin and far away. Silverton waited 2 days north, a mining town built on false promises and whiskey. The banker, Randall Pierce, was there. The man who had taken what was left of her father's life and turned it into someone else's profit. By noon, the heat settled heavy. Rhea rode beside Jonah now, their horses keeping the same rhythm. She said, "When we find him, I don't want you to shoot first." Jonah glanced at her. "You think I can't hold back? I think you've spent too many years ending things with bullets." He gave a slow nod. "You're probably right." The road narrowed between cliffs. The echo of hooves came back like memory. "Tell me something," she said. "What keeps a man like you alive after all this?" Jonah's voice was low. Habit, guilt, hope, depending on the day. And today? He looked at her, the hint of a tired smile in his eyes. Maybe hope. The answer caught her off guard. She turned away before he saw her soften. They reached the edge of a broad plain by dusk. A storm was building again on the horizon, rolling dark and slow across the hills. They made camp near a cluster of boulders that broke the wind. Jonah built the fire, his movements practiced. Rhea watched, remembering another fire, the one that had taken her home. The crackle, the heat, the light. She hated and needed it all the same. He must have seen something in her eyes because he said quietly, "You still smell the smoke, don't you?" She met his gaze. "Every time I close my eyes." He nodded. "It fades. Not quick, not clean. But it does." She studied him across the fire. "How long did it take for you?" He poked the coals with a stick, watching sparks rise. "Still working on it." Silence grew thick between them. The storm wind hummed in the distance. She wanted to ask if he'd ever loved anyone before all this. She didn't. Some questions only make the night colder. Instead, she said, "If we live through Silverton, what happens then?" Jonah looked into the fire. "You go back to your land. Rebuild, maybe. And I keep riding. That's it? That's all there's left for a man like me." She shook her head. "You make it sound like you're already halfway to gone." He looked up. The firelight caught his eyes. "Maybe I am." For a long time, neither spoke. The wind picked up, brushing dust across the flames. Then, without meaning to, she said, "You don't have to keep running, Jonah." He smiled faintly, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "And where would I stop, Rhea?" "Right here," she said. For once. He didn't answer, but something in him shifted. Barely. Quietly. Like the sound of a man remembering what still feels warm. The storm reached them near midnight. Rain hammered the rocks, wind whipping through the canyon. The fire hissed and died. Jonah moved quickly, pulling the horses under an overhang. Rhea followed, soaked through, her hair clinging to her face. Lightning cracked above them, turning the world white. She flinched. He caught her wrist, steadying her. The air between them filled with rain and breath. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though her voice shook. "I hate storms." "I know." He drew her closer, not rough, just sure. His coat smelled of rain and dust, and something faintly like whiskey. She didn't pull away. Outside, thunder rolled, deep as the earth itself. Inside the narrow space, their heartbeats filled the silence. She felt his hand at her back, steady and warm. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just there, anchoring her to the ground when everything else moved. Her voice came low. "Why are you still here, Jonah?" "Because you are," he said simply. The storm roared. She pressed her forehead to his chest, felt the slow rhythm of his breath. For a moment, she forgot what he'd done. She only felt what he was doing now, holding her steady while the world broke open around them. When the wind began to quiet, he didn't let go. She didn't ask him to. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. The sky cracked open, stars trembling behind the thinning clouds. She looked up at him, their faces inches apart. The lamplight from the fire's dying embers flickered across his jaw, his mouth, his eyes. For one breath, she didn't care about the past. She didn't care about forgiveness. She only cared about the space between them. How small it had become, how dangerous and safe it felt all at once. But before she could move closer, he whispered, "You should sleep. We ride at dawn." She hesitated, then nodded. When she lay down near the fire's remains, she could still feel the ghost of his warmth along her skin. The storm had passed, but something else had begun. Quiet, uncertain, unstoppable. If this story has touched the quiet ache between regret and peace, stay close. The dawn will bring what hearts try to hide. If you've ever felt a storm wash away what hate once built, let your heart keep listening. The trail to Silverton waits, and it carries more than truth. The sun rose red over the plains, its light thick as blood across the sky. Steam lifted from the wet earth, turning the world into a haze of gold and smoke. Rhea and Jonah rode side by side through the mist, the silence between them heavy with everything the storm had left behind. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the memory of his arms around her, the steadiness, the warmth, the ache that came from wanting something she wasn't sure she could have. Jonah rode quiet, eyes forward, hat brim low. If the night had changed him, he didn't show it, but something in his shoulders looked lighter, as if the storm had washed a weight off his back. By late morning they saw the first roofs of Silverton, glinting like dull coins in the distance. The town sat on a slope of broken rock and stubborn pride. Smoke rose from chimneys, horses tied along the main street, a telegraph wire singing faintly in the wind. Jonah slowed his horse. "We find Pierce. We do it quiet," he said. Rhea nodded. "I don't want a crowd." They rode in through the southern road, dust curling up behind them. The saloon doors swung open as they passed, men glancing up and then away. Rhea felt their stares, half curiosity, half warning. Pierce's bank sat near the end of the street, its sign worn but proud. Randall Pierce and Cummer's Loans and Holdings. Jonah tied his horse and turned to her. "You sure you want to go in first?" She met his eyes. "He took my father's name off that door. I'm not letting you speak for me." He gave a single nod. "Then I'll follow your lead." The air inside smelled of paper, dust, and ink. A clerk looked up from his ledger, startled. "Ma'am, sir, can I help you?" Rhea's voice was even. "Where's Mr. Pierce?" The man hesitated. "He's in his office, but—" Jonah stepped forward, quiet but certain. "Tell him it's about the Collier ranch." That name hung in the air like a ghost. The clerk paled, turned, and hurried through a back door. Moments later, Randall Pierce appeared. He was thinner than she remembered, hair gray, suit crisp. His smile was professional until he saw her. Then it faltered. "Rhea Collier," he said softly. "I thought you'd left the territory." "I did," she said, "but I came back for what's mine." Pierce's eyes flicked to Jonah. "You bring muscle now. I thought your family had more pride." "I brought truth," she said, "and he's part of it." Jonah stayed silent, watching. Pierce sighed and gestured to the door. "This isn't a place for ghosts, Miss Collier. The past is done." She stepped closer. "Not for me." She reached into her coat and laid the papers Jonah had taken from Dorn's men onto the desk. "Your signature, your payments. You took our land before the fire finished burning." Pierce's hand trembled as he lifted the top page. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," she cut in. "You lied to my father. You sold what you swore to protect. And when the smoke cleared, you built your fortune on his ashes." He set the paper down carefully. "You think the world works on honor, girl? It works on numbers. Your father was finished the moment he trusted men who don't." Her voice lowered, steady and sharp. Then you'll pay for every acre you stole." Pierce laughed, bitter and dry. "With what? You gonna shoot me in broad daylight? That outlaw beside you has already done enough killing for one lifetime." Jonah's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "You're right," he said. "But the thing about truth, it spreads quicker than bullets." Pierce froze when Jonah stepped forward, laying another paper on the desk. It was signed by the Territorial Claims Office, stamped to and dated, the legal proof that Pierce had transferred ownership through forged documents. "I kept a copy," Jonah said. "I was there the night it changed hands. You remember?" Pierce's face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare." "I would," Jonah said quietly, "and she deserves it back." Rhea's hands shook as she looked at the papers. Everything her father had lost, proof that his honor hadn't died for nothing. Pierce leaned back, eyes cold. "You think you can undo what's been built over years?" Rhea stepped forward, close enough for him to smell the dust on her coat. "I don't need to undo it. I just need the truth to ruin your peace." Pierce's lips twitched. The law won't side with a ghost. Jonah smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but this town doesn't trust bankers who burn ranches." The door opened behind them. 2 deputies stood in the threshold, men Jonah had known once by name. "You might want to see this," Jonah said, handing them the document. Pierce's mask cracked then. He rose, voice trembling. "You'll regret this, both of you." "No," Rhea said softly. "We already have." The deputies read, exchanged a look, and motioned for Pierce to sit. The sound of his cuffs clicking closed was quiet but final. Outside, the street watched as the banker was led away. Rhea stood still, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Jonah came beside her, hat in hand. "It's done," he said. She shook her head slowly. "No, it's justice, not peace. Peace takes longer," he said, "but this is where it starts." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain again. The storm clouds gathered on the horizon, black and silver. Rhea looked at him, really looked. The lines around his mouth, the tired steadiness in his eyes, the way he stood as if he'd finally put something down. "You could leave now," she said. "No one would follow." He nodded. "Maybe. But I'd rather ride with you a little longer." Her breath caught. "And after that? After that, we see if the fire finally goes out." The sky darkened, thunder muttering in the distance. She didn't answer. She just met his eyes, and for the first time the silence between them felt less like pain and more like promise. If this story has carried a spark through the dust in your heart, stay close. The night ahead still has its say. If you've ever seen justice and mercy share the same breath, keep listening. Their fire hasn't burned out yet. The rain reached Silverton by sundown. It came soft at first, then heavier, drumming on rooftops and horses and the edges of every secret left in that town. The street emptied fast. Lamps flickered to life behind glass. Rhea and Jonah stood beneath the saloon's awning, watching the water run down the steps like spilled whiskey. Pierce was gone, taken east to stand trial. The townsfolk would talk for weeks, maybe months. Justice had been served in the way justice sometimes is, imperfect but visible. Yet Rhea didn't feel lighter. She felt hollow, as if everything that had fueled her, the anger, the grief, had burned out all at once. Jonah handed her his coat. "You're shaking." She shook her head. "I'm fine. Fine doesn't tremble like that." She took the coat, but didn't put it on. The rain hissed against the wood above them. You ever spend so long chasing something that when you finally catch it, you don't know what to do with your hands? He nodded. That's every man I've ever been." Rhea looked at him. "Then what did you do?" "Dropped my hands," he said, "and learned how to hold something that wasn't a gun." She almost smiled. "And did that work?" "Sometimes," he said quietly. "Depends on what I was trying to hold." They stepped out into the rain together. The mud swallowed their boot prints. Jonah's horse whickered softly from the hitching post. He stroked its neck, steady and gentle. Rhea watched his hand move, the tenderness there. It undid something deep inside her chest, the part that still believed gentleness couldn't survive in men who'd done violent things. They found a room above the saloon for the night. 2 beds, 1 lamp, the sound of rain steady against the window. Rhea sat on the edge of hers, untying her hair. It fell damp around her shoulders. Jonah stood near the window, watching lightning flash across the dark hills. "Feels like the world's washing itself clean," he said. She looked up. "Can it?" "Not all the way," he said, "but clean enough to start over." Her heart twisted. "I wouldn't even know how." He turned then, meeting her eyes. "You start by forgiving yourself." She frowned. "For what?" "For surviving," he said. The words hit her like a quiet blow. She didn't answer. He didn't move closer. He just let the silence hold the shape of what neither of them could name. After a while she whispered, "When this is done, when the land's mine again, what happens to you?" He smiled faintly, the corner of his mouth soft. "Men like me fade out where the trail ends. Maybe I head south. Maybe I find another fight worth losing." "I don't want you to fade," she said, before she could stop herself. His expression changed. Something tender, something dangerous. He crossed the room slowly, the boards creaking under his boots. He stopped just short of her, close enough for her to feel his breath. "Careful, Rhea," he said softly. "You start talking like that, a man might believe you mean it." She lifted her chin. "What if I do?" He didn't answer. His hand rose halfway, as if to touch her face, then hesitated. The moment stretched thin, the air charged like the space before thunder. Then she reached for him instead. Her fingers brushed the scar at his jaw. His breath caught. She felt his pulse through her fingertips, strong, uneven, human. He whispered, "You don't owe me this." "I know," she said. "That's why it matters." His hand found her cheek, rough and trembling. He kissed her, slow, careful, as if testing whether the world would let it happen. It did. The rain outside softened to a hush. The room filled with warmth and breath and the quiet sound of something breaking open. His hands were gentle, tracing her shoulders, her neck, the small tremor of life returning. Her heart moved between memory and forgiveness, between what he'd done and what he was now. When the kiss broke, she stayed close, forehead resting against his. "This doesn't erase anything," she whispered. "No," he said, "but it might heal something." They stood like that until the lamp guttered low. The thunder drifted farther away, and the night settled around them like a blanket no one had owned for years. Later she lay awake, listening to his breathing across the room. The ache inside her wasn't sharp anymore. It was deep and quiet, like the sound of rain after fire. She thought of her father, his hands, his voice, the way he'd taught her that strength wasn't hardness. It was holding on. She wondered what he'd say if he saw her now. Maybe he'd understand. Maybe he'd just nod and let the rain speak for him. Jonah stirred once, then went still again. Rhea turned toward the window. The horizon was faintly blue. Dawn would come soon, and with it, choices she couldn't yet name. If this story has warmed the quiet between pain and peace, stay close. The dawn will ask what love dares to answer. If you've ever felt rain wash away what guilt once carved, keep listening. The morning light is almost here, and it still remembers their names. The dawn came quiet, soft as a confession. A pale mist drifted through the streets of Silverton, the kind that turned edges to memory. Rhea woke to the sound of boots being pulled on, of leather creaking, of a man trying to leave before the day found him. Jonah was by the door, hat in hand, coat already on. His movements were careful, respectful, as if he didn't want to wake her. But she was already awake. You weren't going to say goodbye. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. The light from the window caught his face, and for a moment he looked younger, less outlaw, more lost. Didn't seem fair to start another fire when one just went out. She sat up, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. So that's it? You just ride off again? He turned toward her, slow. You've got your land back, your father's name cleared. You don't need me haunting what's left. Her voice softened. Maybe I do. He breathed out, eyes closing for a heartbeat. You don't, Rhea. You just think you do because it's quiet now. Quiet can sound like need when you're not used to it. She stood, crossing the space between them. The floorboards sighed beneath her bare feet. You think this is about quiet? He met her gaze. Then what is it? It's about not wanting to lose the first man who stood next to me, instead of above me. The words hung between them, raw and trembling. Jonah's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with something she didn't dare name. You're better off without my kind of shadow, he said. You're not a shadow, she whispered. You're what walked out of one. He laughed once, low and broken. You make me sound like I can be saved. Maybe you already are. He looked away, toward the window. The street outside was waking. Wagon wheels, distant voices, the scrape of a shovel in the mud. Life went on, even after fire, even after forgiveness tried to take root. Finally he said, There's a bounty on my head still, a few towns over. If I stay, that trouble finds you. She didn't flinch. Then we'll face it. He smiled, tired and proud. You talk like your father. Then maybe you should stop running from him, too. That silenced him. He stepped closer, close enough for her to see the faint scar on his neck, the line of weariness in his eyes. You don't understand, he said softly. Men like me, we don't get to settle. We just find places to pause. Then pause here, she said. He stared at her for a long moment, and in that look lived everything he couldn't say. The pull, the fear, the ache of wanting something too good for his hands. He reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. You make a man believe the road could end, Rhea Collier. Maybe it can, she said. He leaned in, kissed her forehead, slow, reverent, almost a prayer. If I stay, I ruin what you've rebuilt. If I go, maybe the wind carries something better behind me. She swallowed, fighting the sting in her throat. You think I can just forget? No, he said. I hope you never do. The words were both mercy and wound. He opened the door. Morning light spilled across the floor. He paused once more, looking back. There's a man named Graves south of the ridge, he said. He's still burning farms for coin. If I find him, maybe I find the end of all this. And if he finds you first, Jonah smiled faintly, then you'll know the fire took what it started with. She wanted to stop him. She wanted to ask him to stay until the ache in her chest learned to breathe without him. But she didn't. She'd learned that love wasn't always about holding. It was sometimes about letting someone walk toward the storm that still belonged to them. He stepped into the morning. The door closed soft behind him. Rhea stood there long after the sound of his horse faded. The room felt both empty and alive, like the air after lightning, the kind of silence that doesn't forget what it's seen. Hours passed before she moved. She went downstairs, out into the rain-washed street. The sky had cleared, a wide, endless blue, stretching west, the direction he'd gone. She looked that way until the sunlight blurred her vision. Then she turned toward the livery, saddled her horse, and tied her father's old scarf to the saddle horn. "For luck," she whispered, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. It was a promise. The wind caught her hair, warm and restless. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbled again. She smiled at the sound. It no longer frightened her. She mounted up and rode north, back toward the ranch, back toward whatever life waited to be rebuilt. But she carried the sound of his voice with her. The drawl, the weight, the strange gentleness that had taught her that even outlaws could love, and even the burned could bloom again. If this story has left a quiet space open in your chest, stay close. The fire hasn't faded yet. If you've ever let love walk away because it had to, let that ache remind you you're still alive. Their trail isn't over. The next dawn will decide what remains. The wind carried spring across the plains. Weeks had passed since Silverton. The snow on the far peaks had started to melt, filling the rivers with silver. Rhea rode slow through the open country, her father's land stretching ahead like something half-remembered, half-reborn. The fences were gone, the barn just a skeleton of black wood, but grass had pushed through the ash, stubborn and green. Life had found its way back, one root at a time. She dismounted, boots sinking in soft earth. The air smelled clean, quiet, whole. For the first time in years, she wasn't listening for fire. She was listening for peace. She spent the morning rebuilding the corral, hammering boards with hands that no longer shook. Each strike was a kind of prayer, one for her father, one for the man who'd tried to undo what he once destroyed. By noon, a dust trail appeared on the southern ridge. Rhea shaded her eyes, heart rising before her mind could stop it. A lone rider came slow, silhouette against the horizon, Jonah Cade. Her throat tightened. Part of her wanted to run to him. Part of her wanted to make him earn every step closer. He dismounted a few yards away, hat in hand, eyes down. He looked thinner, sunburned, road-worn, but alive. "You found him," she said quietly. "I did," he answered. "And?" "He's gone," Jonah said. "The burning's done. I made sure." She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "You came back." He smiled faintly. "Didn't think I would, did you?" "I didn't think you could." He looked out over the land. "It's different. Greener than I remember." "It's healing," she said. "So am I." Jonah stepped closer. The wind moved between them, warm and steady. "I didn't come for forgiveness, Rhea. I came to see if I still belonged anywhere." She studied him, the road dust, the lines around his eyes, the quiet inside his voice. "Maybe you never did," she said. "Maybe you just had to build the place yourself." He looked down at the earth, then back at her. "You offering me a hammer?" She smiled, small and real. "Might be." They stood side by side, in the half-finished corral, nailing boards in silence. The sound of metal on wood echoed against the hills, a rhythm older than regret. When the last plank was set, Jonah leaned on the fence, breath steady, eyes distant. "Your father would have been proud." he said. She looked toward the horizon. He'd have shot you first. Jonah laughed softly. Maybe both. She smiled. He believed in redemption. He just didn't hand it out easy. Jonah nodded, gaze on the sky. Neither do you. They fell quiet. The sun slid lower, painting everything gold. Dust glowed in the air like fire that had finally learned to live without burning. Rhea said, "You could stay. Help mend what's left." He turned toward her, something cautious in his eyes. "And if I do?" "Then we see if the land remembers mercy." For a moment neither moved. Then Jonah took off his gloves, reached out, and brushed her hand. His touch was rough, careful, honest. "You sure about this?" he asked. "I've never been sure of anything," she said, "but I know what peace feels like now, and it looks a lot like you." He exhaled, long and quiet, and she felt the years fall out of him, the guilt, the distance, the dust. They stood there as the sun dipped behind the hills. The wind shifted, bringing the smell of rain, but this time it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like promise. Jonah whispered, "You think fire ever really dies?" She looked up at him, eyes soft. "No, it just learns how to warm instead of burn." He leaned in, kissed her slow, deep, with all the silence between them turned to light. It wasn't a kiss of apology. It was a beginning. When they pulled apart, the first stars had come out, trembling above the desert. The world felt whole again. Rhea rested her head against his chest. "So what now, Jonah Cade?" He wrapped an arm around her, voice low. "Now we build, fence by fence, day by day." They stood together in the fading light, two souls shaped by flame, finally finding peace in the quiet after. The wind carried the smell of rain, and somewhere in it, the echo of every fire they had survived. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you. May you find peace where the dust settles, and love where the wild still breathes.